Nathan Briggs never expected to see excitement again in his lifetime. And frankly, that was fine by him. His days of charging into battle, dodging plasma fire, and making last-second decisions that determined the fate of entire squads were long over. These days, the only enemy he had to fight was the occasional storm that made fishing a nightmare and the stubborn fish that refused to bite. He sat on the wooden dock, his feet dangling just above the water, hands busy untangling a net that had somehow turned into a labyrinth of knots. "You do this to annoy me, don't you?" he muttered at the mess of rope in his hands. The water, in its infinite wisdom, had no reply. A soft breeze carried the scent of salt and fresh air, ruffling his graying hair as he glanced up at the sky. Twin suns hung lazily above, painting the ocean in shades of gold and deep blue. On the horizon, a few fishing boats bobbed in the distance, their sails catching the wind. It was a peaceful, boring, perfect life. Exactly what he had wanted when he left his old life behind. But, of course, peace never lasted long. A familiar voice called from behind him. "Still losing fights to nets, old man?" Nathan turned to see Garrett, one of the younger fishermen, standing there with his arms crossed, a cocky grin on his sunburned face. Nathan scoffed. "At least my losses don't come from falling overboard while trying to reel in a guppy." The younger man flushed. "That was one time." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Okay, twice." They both chuckled as Garrett sat beside him, handing over a cold bottle of something vaguely resembling beer. It wasn't Earth beer, nothing on this planet quite tasted like home, but it did the job. Nathan took a swig and let out a satisfied sigh. "Any word from your boy?" Garrett asked. Nathan hesitated for just a fraction of a second before shaking his head. "Nope. Not in years." Garrett didn't push. Everyone knew Isaac Briggs had left this quiet fishing colony a long time ago, chasing something bigger out in the stars. A life of bounty hunting, of danger, of running toward the kind of trouble that Nathan had spent his life running away from. The boy had been stubborn, ambitious, and just reckless enough to get himself into trouble. But he had been good at what he did, too good. That was why Nathan had stopped trying to follow his exploits. The last thing he wanted was to hear that his only son had been blown to bits chasing a payday. Nathan took another sip of his drink and changed the subject. "Weather looks good for fishing tomorrow." Garrett accepted the change with an easy nod. "Yeah, as long as those damn storm squids don't show up again." Nathan shuddered. He had not missed those. The rest of the evening passed like any other. As the sky darkened, lanterns lit up along the village's boardwalk, casting warm golden light onto the wooden planks. The air smelled of grilled fish, roasted spices, and the unmistakable scent of a place that had existed peacefully for decades, untouched by the larger conflicts of the galaxy. Nathan allowed himself to believe, just for a moment, that this peace would last forever. That illusion shattered just before midnight. It started with the sound. A deep, rumbling hum that vibrated through the air, rattling windows and sending ripples across the ocean surface. Nathan had heard that sound before, long ago, in battles he never wanted to relive. Engines. Big ones. He was already on his feet before the first shadow passed over the village. The sky, once full of stars, was now blocked by the hulking silhouettes of drop ships descending like hungry beasts. A klaxon blared through the village, late but not entirely unexpected. The people here weren't warriors, but they weren't fools either. Doors slammed open. Shouts filled the air. The smell of burning ozone signaled that plasma weapons were being primed. And then, chaos. Figures in dark armor stormed the streets, moving with practiced efficiency. They were Galactic raiders, the kind of scum that saw small colonies like this as easy pickings. They weren't here for trade. They were here to take. Nathan moved on instinct. His old training surged back to life as he ducked behind a supply crate, assessing the battlefield. He saw Garrett, wide-eyed and terrified, trying to shield one of the younger fishermen. He saw families scrambling for shelter. He saw a woman, Raina, the village's doctor, standing in front of her home with a knife that was far too small to do anything against the towering raiders advancing toward her. Nathan didn't think. He moved. In 3 steps, he reached the closest raider and drove his fist into the bastard's throat. The alien, some 4-eyed brute with tusks, stumbled back, choking, giving Nathan enough time to rip the plasma pistol from its holster. The moment he gripped the gun, His old instincts took over completely. One shot. Raider down. He spun. 2 shots. Another raider collapsed. For a brief, shining moment, Nathan believed they had a chance. That maybe, just maybe, they could fight these bastards off. And then, something hard slammed into the back of his skull. The world tilted. Stars exploded behind his eyes. His knees hit the wooden planks of the dock, and the last thing he saw before everything went dark was Garrett's terrified face as the raiders dragged him away. When Nathan woke up, his wrists were bound, his head throbbed like hell, and the cold metal floor beneath him told him exactly where he was. A prisoner aboard a raider ship. He groaned. "Oh, fantastic." A voice snorted nearby. "Glad you're awake, old man. Wouldn't want you to miss the fun." Nathan turned his head and found himself looking at a particularly nasty-looking raider, its reptilian face twisted into something vaguely resembling a grin. The raider crouched beside him, resting a heavy boot on Nathan's chest. "You put up a good fight down there. Almost made it interesting." He leaned closer, his breath smelling like something had died in his throat. "But you're just a fisherman now. And nobody's coming to save you." Nathan almost laughed. Almost. Because if there was one thing he knew for certain, it was that the bastard was dead wrong. Somewhere out there, Isaac Briggs was about to get a very, very angry message. And if these raiders thought they had trouble with an old fisherman, they had no idea what was coming next. Isaac Briggs had seen some ridiculous bounty postings in his time. One guy wanted his ex-wife arrested for stealing his heart. Another offered 500,000 credits to track down a rogue AI that turned out to be an overglorified toaster. But when his communicator buzzed with an urgent message tagged priority family, he knew it wasn't going to be something he could ignore. The moment he opened the message, his blood ran cold. A shaky, low-resolution video flickered onto his screen. The lighting was dim, but Isaac recognized the inside of a raider ship's cargo hold. And right in the middle, tied to a chair, looking mildly annoyed rather than terrified, was his father. Isaac let out a slow breath. Son of a... A particularly ugly alien stepped into frame, a reptilian brute with a mouthful of fangs and an ego big enough to think this was a good idea. This message is for anyone who cares about this old sack of bones. The raider smirked, nudging Nathan's chair with his boot. We found him hiding away on some worthless little water rock. Normally, we'd just sell him off, but he's got some fight in him. Maybe someone will pay a little extra for that spirit. Nathan, who clearly hadn't gotten the memo about looking helpless, rolled his eyes. You talk too much. The raider's smug grin faltered for a second before he forced it back. We're open to negotiations. You have 3 days before we start sending back pieces. The video cut off. Isaac didn't move for a long moment. Then, without a word, he stood up, grabbed his weapons belt, and started strapping on gear. Across the room, his ship's AI, Vera, let out a long, exaggerated sigh. Oh no. Someone kidnapped your dad. What a shocking and completely unexpected mistake on their part. Isaac buckled his pistol into place. Save the sarcasm, Vera. I need a list of every raider crew operating in this sector, their bases, and how fast I can get to them. Vera hummed in thought. You know, I could just send a warning message. Something like, return the old man now, or Isaac Briggs will personally tear your ship apart with his bare hands. Might save us the trouble. Isaac smirked. Tempting. But no. These bastards took my father. I want to personally explain why that was the dumbest decision of their miserable lives. Vera's holographic avatar flickered to life, a glowing blue silhouette with arms crossed. Fine, fine. But let's be efficient. Who's got him? Isaac pulled up the still frame of the raider from the message. That's Korvax Shen. Runs with the Black Fong Syndicate. Mid-tier operation, mostly small-time piracy and slave trading. They're not elite, but they've got numbers. Vera's screens lit up with data. Their flagship is the Bloodied Claw. Last spotted near Vexurb 9, about a 6-hour jump from here. Isaac slid into the pilot's chair, fingers flying over the controls. Engines roared to life, the ship vibrating as it prepared for takeoff. Plot a course. And tell the nearest weapons dealer to prep my order. Vera arched a digital eyebrow. Going loud, are we? Isaac's grin was anything but friendly. "Oh, I'm bringing the big guns." 6 hours later, the bloodied claw was drifting near an asteroid belt, likely waiting to refuel or fence their stolen goods. Isaac's ship, the Revenant, hovered just beyond their sensor range. "All right," Isaac murmured, zooming in on the raider vessel through his scopes. "What's our best way in?" Vera's voice crackled through his earpiece. Option 1. You sneak aboard, take out the guards one by one, and rescue your father like a true professional. Isaac adjusted the targeting array. And Option 2. You launch yourself through their cargo bay doors like an angry meteor, take out half their crew before you hit the ground, and let your reputation do the rest. Isaac considered this for a moment. Then he fired the boarding harpoon straight into the claw's hull. Option 2 it is, Vera deadpanned. The harpoon's impact sent a tremor through the raider ship, followed by the wail of emergency klaxons. Isaac clipped his helmet into place, double-checked his ammo, and hit the release lever. The airlock hissed open, and suddenly he was flying. His jetpack flared, adjusting his trajectory as he crashed through the cargo bay doors feet first, sending 2 very surprised guards tumbling backward. The first raider barely had time to blink before Isaac put a bullet between his eyes. The second tried to scramble for his gun, but Isaac's combat knife was faster, slicing clean through the alien's throat. The alarm had already drawn attention. More raiders stormed in. Isaac cracked his neck. "All right, boys. Who's first?" Blasters fired. Isaac moved. Fast. Rolling behind cover, he returned fire, every shot finding its mark. A hulking brute with cybernetic arms charged him. Isaac slid under the swing and planted 3 bullets in the bastard's back before he hit the ground. A raider tried sneaking up behind him. Bad move. Isaac spun, grabbed the guy by the wrist, and used his own momentum to slam his face into a bulkhead. The fight lasted a whole 90 seconds before the bay was silent again. Isaac barely looked winded. Vera's voice crackled in his earpiece. "I assume negotiations went well?" Isaac smirked, stepping over a groaning raider. "Oh yeah. Real smooth." He grabbed one of the fallen guard's communicators and tuned it to the ship's internal frequency. "Korvax Shen," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "I suggest you untie my father before I have to start getting creative." Silence. Then a nervous, crackling reply. Who is this?" Isaac's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your worst nightmare." Somewhere on the ship, Korvax Shen was realizing just how badly he had screwed up. Isaac Briggs had stormed a lot of ships in his career, but this one had a special kind of satisfaction. Most jobs were business, credits exchanged, targets neutralized. This was personal. Through the communicator he'd just hijacked, he could hear the scrambling of raiders, their panicked voices overlapping. He took out the entire cargo bay. "How many men do we have left?" "Not enough." Korvax Shen's voice cut through the noise, strained but authoritative. "Everyone to defensive positions. Kill him on sight." Isaac snorted. "Cute." He stepped over a twitching raider, casually ejecting his spent magazine and loading a fresh one. "Vera, map me a route to the brig." "Already done," Vera replied. "They're funneling forces to choke points, but I've marked a nice little side route for you. Fewer bodies, fewer guns." Isaac's boots barely made a sound as he moved through the corridors, weapon raised, senses sharp. The first guard who stepped into his path didn't even have time to blink before Isaac dropped him with a single shot. The second actually got a warning off. Too bad it was just a gargled scream as Isaac slammed him into a wall, then knocked him out cold with the butt of his pistol. A klaxon blared. Then another. "Security lockdown initiated," Vera observed. "You've got 30 seconds before every bulkhead seals shut." Isaac broke into a sprint, boots pounding against the metal floor. The hallway ahead split in 2. One led to the brig, according to Vera's map. The other, straight into a firing squad. Isaac chose the correct one. By correct, of course, he meant the firing squad. Blaster bolts lit up the corridor, scorching the walls and floor. Isaac dove into cover, grinning despite himself. "Still time to take the sneaky route," Vera chirped. Isaac answered by hurling a grenade. The explosion rocked the hallway, sending a few unlucky raiders flying. The survivors staggered, deafened, confused. Isaac was already on them. He moved like a ghost, weaving through the smoke, his pistol firing precise, lethal shots. One went down. Then another. A raider lunged at him with a vibroblade. Isaac sidestepped and drove his own knife into the guy's gut, twisting it before yanking it free. It was over in seconds. "Briggs just ahead," Vera updated. "Your dad's got company." Isaac reloaded as he moved, barely sparing a glance at the bodies behind him. He reached the final door. Heavy. Reinforced. The kind you didn't just kick down. Isaac knocked politely, then planted 3 explosive charges on the locking mechanism. He took a step back. Pressed a button. Boom. The door crashed inward, smoke billowing out. Inside, Nathan Briggs blinked against the sudden chaos. He was still tied to a chair, looking about as annoyed as a man could be after a few hours of captivity. Across from him, Korvax Shen stumbled back, coughing, a blaster half-raised. Isaac holstered his pistol and pulled out a bigger gun. "Was enjoying myself." Isaac holstered his pistol and pulled out a bigger gun. "Was enjoying myself." Korvax recovered just enough to realize the situation. Wait. He threw his hands up. "We can talk about this." Isaac shot him in the knee. Korvax screamed, collapsing onto the floor. Nathan whistled. "Still not much for negotiations, huh?" "Only when necessary," Isaac said, cutting through the ropes binding his father. "You good." Nathan rolled his shoulders. "A little stiff, but I've had worse." A warning light flashed across the room. "Oh," Vera chimed in. "I think you just triggered the ship's self-destruct." Isaac turned to Korvax. "Really?" The raider groaned in pain, clutching his ruined knee. "I'd rather blow the ship than let you take it." Isaac sighed. "That's just inconvenient." A loudspeaker crackled to life. "Self-destruct initiated. 10 minutes until total destruction." Nathan cracked his knuckles. "All right. Let's go." "Where?" Korvax gritted out. Isaac grabbed him by the collar and hauled him up. You're coming with us." The raider whimpered. Isaac slung his father a spare pistol as they stepped back into the chaotic corridors. By now, the remaining raiders knew their ship was doomed, and panic had set in. Some ran for the escape pods. Others, still loyal, or just incredibly dumb, tried to stop them. Nathan, finally able to stretch his legs, punched the first raider so hard the poor guy's head bounced off the wall like a melon. Isaac dropped another with a well-placed shot. Vera, ever helpful, chimed in. "I've unlocked the docking clamps on the Revenant. You might want to hurry." They turned a corner and skidded to a stop. A dozen raiders blocked the way to the hangar. Armored, and looking very, very angry. Nathan sighed. "Really?" Isaac smirked. "I got left, you got right." "Like the old days," Nathan said, rolling his shoulders. Then they charged. Blaster fire tore through the air. Isaac moved like a whirlwind, dodging, weaving, dropping enemies with ruthless precision. Nathan, despite his age, was no slouch, putting down raiders with a mix of gunfire and bone-breaking punches. Korvax, horribly wounded and completely useless, screamed and ducked as a stray bolt nearly took off his ear. The fight was short, brutal, and one-sided. Seconds later, Isaac and Nathan stepped over the bodies, barely out of breath. Nathan clapped his son on the shoulder. "Proud of you, kid." Isaac gave him a lopsided grin. Yeah. Let's get off this sinking ship." They reached the Revenant, engines roaring to life as they boarded. Korvax, bleeding and miserable, slumped into a seat. You're going to let me live?" Isaac tilted his head. "Haven't decided yet." Nathan smirked. "Might just drop you off somewhere unpleasant." Korvax swallowed hard. Behind them, the bloodied claw gave one final, doomed shudder before exploding into a fireball. Isaac took the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls. Nathan leaned back, stretching. "So, dinner after this?" Isaac chuckled. "Yeah. You still like that seafood place on Titan?" Nathan grinned. "Damn right I do." With a final roar of engines, they blasted into the stars. Isaac had dropped a lot of bounties in his time, some alive, some in pieces, depending on how cooperative they were. But Korvax Shen, this was different. The battered pirate sat slumped in a steel chair, wrists and ankles clamped to the floor of a small, dimly lit holding cell aboard the Revenant. His knee, still mangled from Isaac's earlier negotiation, was hastily bandaged, but the pain had left him pale and twitching. Nathan Briggs leaned against the wall outside the cell, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "So, what's the plan, kid?" Isaac studied their prisoner through the thick security glass. "Hadn't decided yet. Normally, I'd drop him off with the Marshal Corps, nice and legal." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "But," Isaac exhaled, "this wasn't just another job. They took you. They made it personal." Korvax, to his credit, found a shred of defiance. "It's nothing personal," he said through clenched teeth. "It's business. Just like it is for you, bounty hunter." Isaac didn't blink. "Business would have been not taking my father in the first place. Didn't know who he was." Korvax spat. "Didn't matter." Nathan finally spoke, his voice eerily calm. "Then you should have asked." Isaac stepped forward, placing a boot on the chair's base, leaning down just enough to make Korvax uncomfortable. "See, I got two options here. 1. I turn you in, collect a nice fat bounty, and enjoy a well-earned drink." Korvax swallowed hard. "And 2. Isaac smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "I make sure no one ever finds what's left of you." A bead of sweat rolled down Korvax's forehead. "You wouldn't." Nathan snorted. "Kid, I once saw you drop a warlord out an airlock for shooting at stray dogs." "Hey," Isaac shrugged. "Dogs are loyal." Korvax paled further. Before he could stammer out a desperate plea, Vera's voice chimed in over the ship's intercom. "Hey boys, hate to interrupt the intimidation session, but we've got company." Isaac straightened. "How bad?" "Well," Vera said, "if I had to guess, I'd say about 3 very angry pirate ships bad." Nathan rubbed his temples. "Let me guess. Friends of his." Korvax actually grinned, despite his broken state. "Did you think I was alone out there?" He laughed weakly. "You just pissed off the biggest pirate crew in the sector." Isaac's jaw tensed. "Vera, how long till they're in firing range?" 2 minutes, she replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines." Nathan clapped his hands together. "Welp, guess we're having a space fight." Isaac grabbed Korvax by the collar. "You better hope you're worth more alive than dead." He shoved the pirate back into his seat and locked the cell door before racing to the cockpit. Nathan was right behind him, sliding into the co-pilot's seat. Vera lit up the display. "We got 3 bogies closing in fast. Looks like 2 medium-class gunships and 1 heavily armed destroyer." Isaac swore under his breath. "They're gonna try and box us in." "Then we don't let them," Nathan said. "Punch it!" The Revenant roared to life, engines flaring as Isaac shoved the throttle forward. The ship lurched, streaking toward the asteroid field just ahead. Nathan glanced at him. "Please tell me you're not thinking of going into the rocks." Isaac's grin was positively feral. "Wouldn't be fun otherwise." The pirate ships opened fire, plasma bolts streaking past, some grazing the hull. Shields flashed under impact. Vera's voice remained far too casual for the situation. "Just a heads up, if we take another dozen hits like that, we're going to be flying less ship and more fireball." Isaac banked hard, weaving between tumbling asteroids. The first gunship followed, trying to match his maneuvers. "Watch this," Isaac muttered. He cut the engines, letting momentum carry the Revenant just enough for the gunship to overshoot its mark. Nathan didn't need instructions. He grabbed the controls for the ship's rear cannons and unleashed hell. A dozen railgun rounds punched straight through the gunship's hull. The vessel shuddered, venting atmosphere before exploding in a blinding fireball. Nathan grinned. "Still got it." The second gunship broke off, but the destroyer kept coming. Isaac's eyes flicked to the weapons panel. 1 torpedo left. "Vera, what are the odds I can thread the needle?" Vera sighed. "If you screw up, about 0. If you pull it off, I'll make sure your epitaph says, 'Absolute madman.'" Nathan just groaned. "Do I even want to know what this plan is?" Isaac didn't answer. He spun the Revenant into a tight roll, aligning the shot perfectly as the destroyer closed in. Then, he fired. The torpedo streaked forward, straight through a narrow gap between two asteroids. The pirate destroyer couldn't react in time. The torpedo smashed through their forward shields and detonated inside their main reactor. The ship disintegrated in a flash of fire and debris. Nathan let out a low whistle. "Damn, kid." Vera's voice was almost impressed. "Okay. That was reckless, stupid, and entirely unnecessary." "Well done." Isaac smirked, flipping switches as he set the ship back on course. Nathan stretched. "So, what do we do with our esteemed guest now?" Isaac sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'll call the marshals. They'll love collecting a high-value dirtbag like him." Nathan chuckled. "And here I thought you'd airlock him for fun." Isaac tilted his head. "Still might." Korvax, from the cell, whimpered. An hour later, the Revenant docked at a station, where two heavily armed marshal officers took Korvax into custody. Isaac and Nathan watched as the pirate was hauled away, still swearing he'd get even someday. Nathan shook his head. "They never learn." Isaac smirked. "No, they don't." They turned away, heading toward the nearest bar. Nathan clapped his son on the shoulder. "Next round's on me." Isaac chuckled. "Damn right it is." And with that, they disappeared into the crowd, just a bounty hunter and his old man, looking for a well-earned drink.